Welcome to Master Your Mindset. Today's episode, we're going to talk about how to grow your awareness and the best way. It's really the best way to understand yourself. And stay tuned because sometimes I'm going to have guests on my podcast and it's all about mindset. You've probably heard about being self aware and self conscious, right? Or awareness and consciousness. Well, there is a little difference, and that's what I'm going to explain to you today. So you've probably also heard the saying, ignorance is bliss, because sometimes it's just a lot easier to not be aware. The only challenge with that is that it can create burnout, it can create breakdowns, emotional, physical, all sorts of, and you're really not happy because you're not aware of who you truly are. Sometimes we think it's easier, but it really isn't. It takes a lot of energy, and that's why you may be exhausted at the end of the day. So, awareness is really becoming aware of the things that you need to work on. It's kind of like driving your car and never really lifting up the hood to see what's really underneath that. You may see that the windshield washer sign comes on your dashboard and you're going, how do I fill up the windshield wiper? Because you've never liquid, because you've never been aware. So it's really opening up that hood and taking a deep dive. And it's really working on emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. So how you think and how you feel is how you act. And if you're not liking the way you're behaving, or if you're not liking the stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in your life, then maybe it's time to start taking a look at what you're thinking. And oftentimes it's your behavior is going to give you a clear cue as to what you're thinking and feeling. So awareness is really becoming aware of things in your life. Consciousness is being consciously aware of your thinking and feeling. Where we become self-conscious is, and you start to feel, what's the word? Anxious, shame, guilt, then you know that you're being overly self-conscious, right? Too self-conscious. And it can have that uneasiness feeling, right? And it's really being preoccupied with, when you're self-conscious, you're really preoccupied with how you are perceived by others and how you may see yourself, so that you may become aware of things. So when we talk about consciousness, is raising things that are in our subconscious patterns of behavior, which is our habits, like driving a car, turning the doorknob on a door to go through, pushing on a revolving door, tying your shoes, doing the many things that you do that are habitual. And of course, there's other things that we may not be consciously aware of, like your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your organs working internally. They're all happening automatically. But when we're saying we want to become more self-aware and build and grow our awareness, it's really learning how to self-regulate our emotions so that we can think better, make better decisions, and then, of course, perform better, not only in our jobs, but with our relationships in our life and all the things that we do. And when we're aware, we bring things from our subconscious to our conscious level so that we can become aware of what's going on. But we want to learn from the past, and we want to know ourselves from the past so that we can learn and bring things into the present moment. So when we're consciously aware, we there are certain things that we can become conscious of, which are good things. Like, when you're going to a meeting and you want to stand straight, you want to make sure, that you're going to a networking meeting and that your hello, my name is on your right side, so that when you shake hands with the person, they're shaking your right hand. Hopefully it's your right hand they're shaking, and they can see your name. So these are the things that you want to be consciously aware. But if you're overly self-conscious, then it's like, oh my God, this person's not going to like me. Those are that inner critic that starts to pick up. That's where the embarrassment, guilt, shame, fear, all those things, that's when you're self-conscious, right? So it's taking things to excess. But you want to be conscious, right? Like using a knife and fork and not using your fingers when you're at a dinner party. So you're really present with yourself. It's having that but when you're aware, it's having that internal mirror, looking at yourself, being introspective, being growth minded so that you can do all the things that you want to do in order for your growth. And to really understand your emotions, but being objective about it, not subjective and start beating yourself up about getting angry or getting embarrassed or you're such an idiot. Those are the things that I used to say to myself. But it's sort of, anger showing up. I wonder what that means. Sort of kind of having that internal mirror, sort of reflecting back to you what's happening, but doing it from the third person so that you're not taking it personally. So it's like, Liz, you're such an idiot, but saying more, look at this, there was anger showing up. So kind of neutralizing it. And these are kind of things that we're not taught as kids on how to understand, right? We're pretty much taught, I know myself, I was taught to push it down, to not think, to not have emotions, and just to do. But the problem is when it starts to bubble up, we want to become aware of what those triggers are. Where is it bubbling up? What is bubbling up? How is it bubbling up? And who? You want to notice things before so you start to notice things before they appear. When I go to this function, every time I see John, there's something there that bothers me and I'm not really sure. So sometimes when we see John, it could be something that we become consciously aware that he's doing, that it could be something that we want to change within ourselves. So be aware of that. It's okay to be conscious of it and become aware of it and say, well, what is it that I want to change? And then you know that that's going to be a triggering event for you. So you can, while you're working on it and you know that you may get triggered, the best thing to do is just to say hi politely, right? And just avoid John. That until you're working on it and trying to figure out, and just have compassion and grace for yourself that you're just working on things that we are all, and that's why they say it's a journey. It's never complete. I'm constantly learning. Like for today, for example, I was in a networking meeting and I was getting nervous. So I always have a piece of paper here and I'm like, nervous. People don't need me. They're fine. No one needs me. Um, oh, I'm scared. I just want to give up sometimes. And it's writing those things down to help me release it so that I can return to the meeting and just be heartfelt. So, what are the three things? There are three ways that I want to give you three tips today. And the first step is journaling. I know it's not something that is really easy for me to do. It's something that I'm still working on, even though I've been working on mindset and teaching people and doing workshops in the past. And it's still something that I'm teaching myself. But I have found that when I'm writing things down, I can visually see it, and then it kind of removes me from it. It's there's an energy going from my brain to my pen to paper, and it kind of releases it. And it also brings it to the surface. And they say that oftentimes a lot of these things, like the nervousness, fear of rejection, they're in our subconscious patterning. 95% is a subconscious pattern. We only are aware of 5%. Can you of 5% of our conscious awareness? Because we are bombarded with 10 million bits of information constantly every day, coming in through all our senses, through our hearing, through our eyesight, through our nose, taste, touch. All these senses are constantly engaged. And so what we've learned to do, and we filter it so that we can only focus on a few things at a time. And so we filter a lot of things out. And so the best way to describe it is to say, you know, a mathematical equation, for example, it's all mathematical. And that's why it's easier to bring journaling into the mathematic equation. If I asked you, this is why it's important to write things down, because that way you can visually see it, because it's really hard to keep things in our mind. And the example is the mathematical equation. So for example, if I said to you, what's 2 plus 2? So right away, you know what the answer is. It's 4. But if I said to you, what's 27,795 plus 3,759? You wouldn't be able to visually picture it in your mind. You'd have to actually physically write it down to see it. That's why journaling is so important. It took me a while, but a mentor told me this, and that's why I finally started journaling, because I couldn't understand. Everybody tells you, I've been told for years to journal, right? But when somebody told me this and gave me that mathematical sort of visualization and recognize, oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to add those big numbers up. I'd have to write it down to visually see it. The next thing is, the second thing I want you to recognize is to meditate. And I'm not talking about crossing your legs and, you know, zoning out and well, I mean, if you can and have nothing appear into your head, but even the most Zen-like monks will tell you that they have thoughts popping into their heads all the time. And meditation is really just to calm your nervous system, because when you're in that stress anxiety state, you're in this what we call the sympathetic expression of the nervous system. And that's in that fight, flight, freeze mode. And when you're in that fight, flight, freeze mode, it's releasing all sorts of chemicals and hormones that gives you that narrow focus, and you're not able to see beyond where you are now. And that's what, and you're not able to see what your thoughts are really causing you to feel that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. And so in order to get you into the parasympathetic state, just take a nice deep breath, close your eyes, and just meditate and just watch. Watch the thoughts popping into your head about a situation or something that you were triggered on. And just say, oh, there's that thought popping in. Don't resist it, because we know, and that'll be a topic for another podcast moment, but we know that when the more we resist, it persists. And I'll explain that in another day. But we know that we can't run from our mind. But it's in the process of where we're doing nothing and we have our eyes closed so that there's no stimuli coming in through our retina and through our eyes, and just breathing, we can see our thought processes. So we can pay attention to our thoughts. And that's pretty much what meditation is. And oftentimes when I'm trying to visualize and meditate my goals and, you know, what I want for my life, I have all sorts of other thoughts popping in, like, don't forget to do this. And don't, it's like, oh, there's that thought again. So when the thought appears, just say, oh, there's that thought. We'll worry about that later. That's all you have to do, is let that thought know. You'll think about them later. Now, when you have triggers, when you get triggered, it's typically some kind of programming, and you'll notice it in yourself. Um, and it's going to be different at first. And these are things that the triggers that you have to change. You'll notice it maybe in others as well. And you'll notice it in yourself that these are things that have to change. So these are triggers. And the third thing I want you to do is pay attention to, when you're meditating, pay attention to your thoughts. But the reason to meditate is, the third step is your emotions or your feelings, because your thoughts and your emotions are so intricately interrelated that sometimes we don't even notice it. And so when you start paying attention to your emotions like anger, jealousy, guilt, shame, stress, fear, you'll notice that if you label it, you'll neutralize it. And then you can start taking a look at what is really making me feel this way? What are the thoughts that I had? What was I thinking that made me feel this way? There's a saying that we are born and then we have sensory experiences all through our life, and then we die. And what I want to tell you that it's really important for us to recognize that how we choose the emotion and the experience is how we're going to live our life. And what I mean by that is every experience that we have, think about this, every experience that we have in our life is really neutral. It's the meaning that we give the experience, it's the feeling that we give the experience, and how we think about that experience that really resonates with us or that really causes us to feel what we're feeling. And it's really tied to a lot of beliefs. And it's really important that you start to challenge your beliefs. And that's how you do it, by following these steps, by journaling, by meditating. And the third step is by meditating, to see the thoughts and ideas that pop up in your head. And the third way is to recognize your feelings and emotions. They're very real, but to kind of label it, to neutralize it, and start to take a look at what's really going on to make you feel this way. Where did it come from? And that's where did it come from is so important. So I hope you've enjoyed it today and understand now that there's a difference between self-awareness and self-consciousness, and awareness and consciousness, and how to tap into it to really start taking a look at what you're thinking and feeling is really crucial in order for you to understand some of your behaviors. Maybe you're not happy with procrastination. Maybe you're not happy with, how you treated someone, or, maybe it's something that you want to change. For example, when somebody cuts you off in traffic and then you flip them a finger and realize, like, is that really doing me good, or is it doing me more harm? And these are things that you want to change. So you want to see, what is it that made you feel that way, that made you act that way, and what were you thinking, so that you could change it. So it's really about looking into the future so that you can know yourself from the past, and you learn in the present moment to make your future bigger and brighter. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe so that you can get notifications. And of course, the more people I get subscribing on this podcast, it's going to really motivate me to bring you more content, as well as, if you want to leave me a comment, maybe something that resonated with you with today's episode. If there's something that you want me to talk about when it comes to mindset, by all means, please let me know or reach out to me privately. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy your day.